two, three. This time of day, everything's okay. I take a long look around, I have to say, this time of year, it becomes clear.
Hello, welcome to your friends and neighbors. I'm your host, Willy Jones, and I am very happy today that my guest that has joined us. We used to get together every once in a while on WBTN and talk about books. And we haven't had a chance to do that in a long time, and by golly, we're going to do it today. My guest this morning is Ellen Havlack. Good morning, Ellen Havlack. How are you?
Good morning, Willie. I'm just fine, thank you.
That's good. This is a little different setup for us. You know, it's not quite as, we can't sit here in our pajamas and drink coffee and stuff like that, like we might have done on the radio. Ellen and I used to talk about books quite a bit. She is the owner of the Bennington Bookshop, along with her husband, Rick Havlack, here at 467 Main Street, right here in Bennington, next to the chocolate shop. Now, don't go into the Village Chocolate Shop first and get chocolate, and then go into the bookstore, because you might get chocolate on the books. But, after you go to the bookshop, you might want to stop in and get yourself a little chocolate or whatever. So, so we're here today to talk about books, and she usually comes in with always comes in with a wonderful supply of books, many different types of books. Now, we won't talk much about mysteries or thrillers.
No, we won't.
No, we won't, because Ellen's not a big fan. Now, I may throw in a few here and there just to ask a few questions about what's going on in the world of book selling. But mostly we're here to talk about books that you might want to read yourself. So I would suggest that anybody that is interested in reading, you might want to have out a pen or pencil, paper, jot down any of these books that Ellen might be talking about, because she usually has a really good selection of different types of books. And I think she's starting off with a certain genre today of nonfiction, and it looks like it's going to be, I think you told me, these are real people, story about real people.
They are real people, Willie, but it's fiction.
Oh, but it's still fiction.
Yes,
oh, okay.
they're novels about
okay.
real people.
All right.
So the first one that I brought is this Age of Desire, and this is by Jenny Fields, and it's a novel of Edith Wharton.
Oh. Now, is she relatively new, this Jenny Fields? I've never heard of her.
Yes, this book is only a couple of years old.
Oh, okay, because I've never heard of her.
But it's been a couple of years since you and I have gotten together.
Yes, it is.
To talk. So I looked through my notebook of things. I used to make a notation start here for Willie.
Yeah, you missed so it's been a couple of years.
I have a couple years worth of books here. So many of them are about writers. Some are just famous people. So that was one. This one is The Aviator's Wife, and of course the aviator was Charles Lindbergh. This is about his wife, Anne Morrow Lindbergh, and it's a wonderful read. I've read many of the nonfiction books about Anne Morrow Lindbergh, and her own book, or I should say books. And it's really based on her life, but it is a fictional version of it.
The children's author, Reeve Lindbergh, is she related to
that's
these?
Anne Morrow Lindbergh and Charles Lindbergh's daughter.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then I just finished reading this one, and it was wonderful. It's called Madam, and it's about an actual madam of a bordello in New Orleans, just about the time that they were creating a legalized district for prostitution. And it's a wonderful story. The woman's name is Madam Josie Arlington. That was not her real name, but that's the name she went by.
Madam Josie Arlington.
And it really is a wonderful story, and it's not risque really in any way. So
Now that's a very green cover.
It is
I know.
a very
I think
green
we've
cover.
talked. I think we've talked about it before, but I remember someplace Grace Mary and I were at some. I don't know where it was, but someone said that books that have green covers don't sell as well.
Really?
I don't know if you've ever heard that. Or
I
not,
have never
but
heard
yeah,
that.
No,
but
they said green is not going to be a bestseller.
oh,
I don't
never
know.
heard of that.
Well.
But this is an actual photograph of a person taken by
It's a great picture.
a famous photographer, E.J. Block.
Okay.
And he's actually a character in the book.
Oh, okay.
So, and Louis
Yeah,
Armstrong shows up as a
Oh,
character, and Jelly Roll Morton also
Oh, yeah. Okay.
shows up.
Oh, wow.
So that's just, it was a fun read.
Yeah.
And
sounds it.
this next one, I can't say that it was a lot of fun. It's called Freud's Mistress, and it's based on Anna Freud's sister, who Anna Freud was Freud's wife, and she comes to live with them, and she and Freud have a lot in common, and they are like a meeting of the minds, but they do start an affair together, and this is just a story of their affair and, you know, her life with the sister Anne Freud. And it's very well written. It is due to come out in paperback soon. This happens to be the hardcover, but.
Are all of these, the other three you showed us are all in paperback or
Yes.
trade or whatever, and this is coming out? Okay.
This is.
And these are all at the bookshop right now?
Yes.
If somebody was interested in one of these books?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And then this one is written by one of my favorite authors, who wrote a book called
Loving Frank?
Loving Frank.
Yeah, I just
Thank
read it
you.
there. No, I just read it right there.
And which was about Frank Lloyd Wright.
Right.
This one is about Robert Louis Stevenson and his much older American wife, and it's called Under the Wide and Starry Sky, and it's just it's so. I love the way she writes and tells the story of these people, and of course, you get to go on all their voyages to the South Seas and Scotland and back and forth to America, and it seems like they were always on the ocean, which was good. He was not in good health. He was a sickly child, and he always felt best when he was on the open sea.
Oh, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
If you're sickly and being
Right.
on open sea.
But he loved the sea, which really shows in his stories.
You know, it's so funny. When I first looked at the cover, the book jacket, I didn't see the face. Isn't that weird? And it's so obvious that it's
It is,
there.
yeah.
But
it
I
is
was just
obvious.
seeing the stars for some reason.
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about Freud's Mistress, there's two authors here. And you and I were speaking last week at the bookshop when I stopped in to buy some books, of course. I was talking about James Patterson. I know we're getting off with mysteries, but and I said I really like the James Patterson character of Michael Bennett. He has the 10 kids. It's an Irish family. It's wonderful. And you said, and you reminded me, of course, you know, what does he write? What part does he have in that book? Can you explain that a little bit more to me? Like, James Patterson has all of these different people that write with him. Does he come up, do you know, with a basic plot and then give it to those folks? Or do you know how they do it?
I don't. I'm not 100%
See,
sure.
I don't know how they do it.
But I think he lends his name to these other authors so that they can get, you know, if they publish a book under their own name, well, first of all, it might not even get published,
Right.
and second of all, it might not sell. But when James Patterson's name on it,
You're lucky if you get
yeah.
picked up by James
So I don't know
Patterson.
how that whole thing
Yeah, I don't
works.
either, because I didn't know whether he
but
gave
these-
him a basic.
These two actually wrote
Did
this
write
book
together.
They
Okay.
did years worth of research on the Freuds
Okay.
and then wrote the book.
Okay, and James Patterson, I'm sure, is very popular, whether it's his own books or somebody that's writing for him or
Well,
whatever.
for us, his own books sell much better than the ones that he writes with other people.
Well, I'm telling people they ought to get the ones with him and Michael. I think it's Ledwidge. I think it's Michael Ledwidge. I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Michael Bennett ones are just, they are so much fun. And my sister-in-law is just crazy about Michael Bennett.
Now, one of my sons loves the cross ones.
Yeah, and I always, they did the book. They did the movie, and it was Tyler Perry as, it just didn't work for me.
Oh.
Did not work for me. So what else are you going to grab out of your little box here?
I've recently become a big fan of Dorothy Parker.
Oh, well.
And thanks to my friend Natalie Wilder, who you know.
Oh, yeah.
And she got me started on the short stories, portable Dorothy Parker. Dorothy Parker really never wrote a novel. She was famous for her short stories and her wit.
She's a very funny lady.
Yes. And so I haven't got, as you can see, I haven't finished this book, but they're great just to pick up. Some of them are only 3 and 4 pages, and they're all very snarky.
This is very popular, right? The portable Dorothy Parker. I think that is.
It's been around for years.
I think that's the one that's, yeah.
Yeah. And so I picked up this novel by Ellen Meister, and it's called Farewell, Dorothy Parker. And I saw Natalie this weekend, and she told me that this Ellen Meister is actually the president of the Dorothy Parker Club in New York. And she's a member of that, Natalie is a member of that group, and they get together.
And Natalie is married to Patrick Ellison Shea,
Yes.
who recently did A Revolutionary Wizard at Oldcastle.
Yes.
Is the story of Benjamin Franklin that Eric Peterson wrote.
Right.
So, yeah, my sister-in-law and her husband and I, we go down to New York the last few years, and we stay at the Algonquin.
Oh.
And the Algonquin was a place where Dorothy Parker, she was part of the Round Table. Of course, that Round Table isn't there anymore, but there's a little witticisms all over the place from Dorothy Parker. And you can also, there's postcards, and there's all kinds of information about Dorothy Parker. So.
And in this one, she's a ghost.
Oh.
And she comes out of the guest book from the Algonquin, and the character is kind of a mousy little woman that's trying to stand up to her boyfriend. And so she steals the guest book.
Oh.
And then, anyway, it's just how Dorothy helps her stand up for herself. It's really quite fluffy, but it was very amusing, and I liked it.
I should probably get a hold of that for my sister-in-law and her husband. I bet they would love to read that.
Yeah. And so then this came in, it's called Under the Table. Dorothy Parker has a quip about being under the table after so many martinis. And it's a cocktail guide, but it has all kinds of different stories about her and her husbands, and Alexander Wolcott, who was also part of the Round Table, and Robert Benchley, who was another person that was a part of this Round Table.
Yeah.
So these are just fun. I don't make any of the drinks, but it's just a fun book to read.
Yeah, well, a lot of these books now have recipes, or there's a lot of books out now. I can't even think of a title of any of them now. But
I've noticed a lot of the mysteries now have little puns about food, and then they'll have recipes.
And there's been these there's been some very popular books too that have recipes. Now I can't even think of any of the titles, but
Diane Mott Davidson started.
Oh well, the mystery, yeah, her little mystery books,
genre.
yeah, those. Yeah. But there's been some really big sellers that I don't know if they're Spanish or Mexican or I don't know. There's some I don't know. Can't think.
I'm not sure which ones those would be.
I don't know. Are there any recipes in chocolat?
I don't
think so. I guess
not.
not.
Remember. A book that I'm really excited about that will be out this June. It's called Shirley, and it's by Susan Scarf Merrill, and she's a alumna of Bennington College. Oh. And she'll be here in town. This is the paperback, but it's coming out in hardcover first. And it's about Shirley Jackson. It takes place in North Bennington. Mentions many people that many of the old writers from the late 60s, early 70s that were there. And also mentions Paula Weldon, the girl that went missing in Glastonbury back in the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a neat story about Shirley Jackson and her husband Stanley Hyman.
Huh. Is there, do we learn a lot about Bennington in there too, or is it basically
It actually
about
takes
their
place
lives?
in North Bennington,
Oh,
and you
okay.
do
Well, yeah,
mention,
Park
they
McCullough
do
House and
mention
everything, yeah.
certain places in North Bennington that you would recognize. So that and she's actually going to be. This is where she's kicking off the publication of her book. So she will be at the Bennington Library on June 30th, which is a Monday night.
Ooh.
And we'll have the books there, and we'll be selling the books, and she'll be reading from this and signing copies and answering questions.
I wonder if any of her family members will show up. She still has a son.
Yes, and
the
the author
area.
has been in touch with her family members, and they were on board with
I don't
with
know
the
why I
book,
can't think of
so-
her son's name at the moment. Musician.
Barry.
Barry Hyman.
Barry Hyman.
Barry Hyman. Yeah.
So, and he's a character also in this book.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And you said that's a novel. Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, it
okay.
is.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I kind of like the idea of that.
Yeah. And then one of my favorite books from last year is this one called Mrs. Queen Takes the Train, and it's Queen Elizabeth is the main character, and she one night she's doing something with her horses, and she's the only one there, and so she just decides that she's going to go to Scotland to see whatever castle they have in Scotland, and so she just leaves, and she of course doesn't have any money in her purse, and one of the people that works for her sees her leave and follows her and kind of keeps track of her, and it's such a cute story.
I wonder
you
why
know, you're
Mrs.
always
Queen.
asking
Yeah.
aren't there any happy books?
Oh, well, for teenagers, a lot of the books for teenagers now can be so downtrodden. I mean,
Yes.
sorry, Brian. Oh God.
Well,
but-
this is a happy book.
Oh,
And
good.
it's not for teenagers, although teenagers could read
Right.
it, but I don't know that they would find
why
it interesting.
Mrs. Queen?
Well, she has to
She didn't wanna-
introduce herself to somebody, and so she just says her name is
She's
Mrs. Queen.
Okay.
Like they wouldn't know she was, the queen. But anyway, it was a fun book.
And speaking of teenage books, now how about this Divergent series? How is that selling at the bookshop?
Oh, it's very popular.
The movie is playing in Bennington now, and the movie looks really good. I got the chance to talk to the author who wrote the Delirium, Pandemonium, that series. But I didn't get to talk to this woman, but I did have a guest on not too long ago on Your Friends and Neighbors, a teenager, and I brought up Divergent. Oh, yes.
Yes,
So
it's very
Is
popular.
there 3 in the series, or there might be more? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, they say that it's going to be the next...
Twilight.
Yeah, well, no, not the other one.
Hunger Games?
Hunger Games. That's
Oh.
what I keep hearing. It's going to be because of the way it, of the theme of the storyline and stuff. But there's a wonderful new actress in it, Shailene Woodley. You saw The Descendants with George Clooney.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you never saw that?
No.
She played his daughter, and she was also in this wonderful movie that everybody, adults, kids, teenagers should see. This Spectacular Now. But yeah, I would assume that was probably pretty popular now. And also, Pownell Elementary School is going to be doing a production of a Magic Tree House book. I think it's Dawn of the Dinosaurs, or
Yeah.
something about the dinosaurs. Are the Magic Tree House books by Mary Pope Osborne, are they still popular with younger children?
They are, and they're still going. I mean, she's still writing
She
them.
must have 25 or 30 of them by now,
Oh,
or maybe
it's up
even
into
more.
the 40s.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I got a chance
So-
to meet her once. Her husband wrote a play that Oldcastle did
Oh.
years ago called Smoke and Mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
And I just to get a little plug in for Pownell Elementary. I'm not even sure, I wish I knew the dates. I think it's just before Easter, though, the weekend before Easter, that they're going to be doing. I didn't even know that. And it's a little musical of
Oh,
a
that would
Magic
be
Tree House.
interesting to see how they
Yeah,
did that.
Yeah. So, okay, what else you got in your magic bag here, magic crate?
I still have books about real people.
Oh, okay.
Novels about real people. And I got onto this theme of Wallace Simpson last year, and because I read this book called That Woman. And this is actually nonfiction about Wallace Simpson and how she met the prince and why he abdicated for her. And it takes her through her childhood all the way up to when she dies. And I just found it fascinating. I love to read things about those.
Looking at
the
her picture,
royals.
looking at her picture, I don't know that I find her beautiful. She's a handsome woman. I guess
Yeah,
I think I'd call her handsome rather
Right.
than beautiful.
She really wasn't all that attractive, but
I always thought
she had a
Georgia O'Keeffe was a handsome woman. She was certainly
Yeah.
not beautiful, but she was a handsome woman.
but Wallace Simpson definitely had a style about
Evidently,
her.
yeah.
And
Look at that waist.
I know, there's
Jeez.
nothing to it.
Yeah, cinched right in there.
So after I read that, these two books came out, and these are both fiction. And one is called The Shadow Queen, which is by Rebecca Dean. And that too just takes a certain portion of Wallace Simpson's life, and that was from the time right before she met the prince. What was his
The
name?
Duke of Windsor?
Duke of Windsor, thank you. I couldn't remember his name. And
Dookie.
through the time that he abdicates. And then this one is called Abdication, and it's by Juliet Nicholson. And it's not really about Wallace Simpson and the Duke of Windsor. It's a separate character, but it's during that time period, and they definitely, you know, create their own history there. So it's kind of addictive, that time period, England in the 30s. And so those are the three that I read about Wallace Simpson.
Now, quite often, you read a lot of nonfiction. I mean, we're getting a lot of fiction here today, which I know you seem to really go for nonfiction.
I like certain types of nonfiction, and actually, I have some here, Willie. If I can.
Well, that's all right.
Grab
If you
them.
dip right over, that's
But,
okay. We're not going to.
And one I know
Oh, well,
you know about.
I have that,
it's
yes.
80 Days, and this book actually is available now in paperback, but I have a hardcover copy, so I brought that. And
So
this
do
author
I.
was here,
Signed.
Matthew
I know.
Goodman.
I have a signed copy.
And he came to Oldcastle last year when they did
Around the World in 80 Days, right?
Yeah.
Oh, such
So-
a good show.
And this is about Nellie Bly and Elizabeth Bisland.
Who I
And
don't
probably
know.
no one ever heard of Elizabeth
didn't.
Bisland. I'd
Never
never heard of
heard
her.
of her.
And I really wasn't sure either about Nellie Bly, why she was so famous. I knew she was a reporter.
Right. That's about all I know.
And this tracks Nellie Bly, after reading, or her publisher, after reading Around the World in 80 Days, really wanted to know if it was possible. And so he sent her on this trip. And at the same time, a rival publisher sent this Elizabeth Bisland in the opposite direction. And Nellie Bly didn't know anything about this until she was about halfway around the world. And I'm not going to tell you who got back to New York first, but anyway, it was an exciting story and very well written. And Matthew is a real nice guy.
Yeah,
and
it was a real great tie-in with the Around the World in 80 Days.
Yeah,
it was really
it was
nice that he was
perfect.
able to be there. And
The timing
Yeah.
was great because
Couldn't
it
have
had
been
just
better.
been published.
couldn't have been better.
And then another one of my favorite nonfiction books from last year is this Boys in the Boat. Again,
Oh.
the 30s. These young men from the United States are hoping to win the gold medal in rowing. And it's mostly the story of this one person. I read it a long time ago, so I can't really remember any of their names, but it goes into a lot of his childhood, how his mother dies and his father remarries, and they kind of abandon, he's the oldest child, they kind of just abandon him. And he's helped along by different people and gets a scholarship or has to work really hard to go to college. And anyway, it's about these young men that get themselves to the Olympics, and you know ahead of time that they do win the gold medal, but it's just it's so exciting, you know, to read it all about the races. And I'm not a real rowing fan, but
No, I wouldn't be either.
but it is a very interesting book, and it almost reads like a novel.
Huh.
So.
You know, all of these other books about women, whether they're novel or nonfiction or whatever, I think we've mentioned this before on the radio when we did the show, when we used to do that show, that I hate the term chicklet.
Mm-hmm.
And don't you think it would be unfair to call any of these books chicklet? Because don't you think men should get to know about these women too, and not just women read these books?
But I really don't consider any of these chicklet. I think chicklet is a little
You're
lighter.
thinking more romance. Yeah, the romance
Not
are
really
more chicklet?
romance. Somewhere between these and a romance novel.
Oh, okay.
More like Jane Green wrote Mr. Maybe.
Right. And the Bridget Jones.
Bridget Jones.
Those
that
are
would
more,
be considered chicklet.
Okay. Because I think some men would consider this chicklet too.
Probably.
I bet you.
Yeah. Because they're not page turners.
No.
I have to
But
tell
you've
you,
introduced me to some wonderful female authors. Adriana Trajani, who I still read her. I just think her books are so much fun.
They are
so
fun.
much
I
fun.
haven't read her new one yet, but I'll get to it.
Okay. All righty.
But back to the real people.
Yeah.
I'm still going on that theme.
Okay. That's great.
I got onto a Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald kick.
So you must have seen The Great Gatsby.
Yes.
Did you go see it?
It was right during the time that The Great Gatsby was coming out. So this book just came out in paperback, and it's called Z, and it's by Therese Ann Fowler, and she has written a number of other books, none of which I've read, but I just love this one. And of course, Scott and Zelda had a very tempestuous, dysfunctional marriage.
She always seemed a bit crazy. A little crazed.
A little crazy. This book goes into their courtship, her childhood, their courtship, and into their early days of their marriage. What was interesting was I finished reading this book on, let me see, I have it written down.
Okay.
I believe it was March 13th. And now I'll never find it. But actually, it wasn't this one, it was another one that I'm going to talk to you about, which I'll mention right now. It's called Call Me Zelda, which I read immediately after this. And that's by Erica Roebuck. And this one goes into her time in the insane asylum, where she is in the South. And it's really, the main character is her nurse, but Zelda's definitely a character, as is Scott. But I finished reading this one down on March 17th of 2013. And I then looked up something about Zelda, and she was laid to rest on March 17th, 1948 in Baltimore, Maryland. I just find little coincidences like that.
Now, do you, in both of these books, are you reading about a lot of the same things, or are they both so different?
They're very different styles, and they cover different periods of her life. But because the authors have such different ways of writing, it's not like you're reading the same thing.
Yeah, wouldn't it be wonderful to just follow an author sometime and follow them through all the research they have to do for books like that? I mean, because they want it to be as true as possible. I mean, sometimes they want to spice them up and add a little bit, here and there, but if they're trying to stay true to the character that they're writing about, it must be so difficult and very time-consuming.
It must be, but they find different ways to do it. Different authors just find different ways to do it. And then after those two, this book came out, Beautiful Fools by Clifton Spargo. And this one I didn't like as much because it was really more about their later marriage, and it was so dysfunctional. And she was in the mental institution, and he would come and take her out. But meanwhile, he's dealing with his alcoholism problems and living on the West Coast and with another woman, I might add. So this one wasn't as much fun to read because it was really kind of uncomfortable reading some of the parts of it, just about, you know, about their lives.
There's probably a ton of books that have been written about Scott and Zelda, right? And probably be a ton more to come
Probably.
in years to come. Yeah.
It just seemed like a very popular topic last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, with
And the woman that wrote Call Me Zelda has also written, she wrote a book called Hemingway's Girl, this Erica Roebuck, which I also read. And that was when he had his place in the Keys, in Key West. And that was, I loved that story too. And again, it was really more about this other character, but a young girl that was a housekeeper for him. And she has a new book. This is the only one I brought that I haven't read yet. And this is called Fallen Beauty. And this one is about Edna St. Vincent Millay, which I really don't know too much about her. I don't read that much poetry.
I don't either, I'm sorry to say. I did sit down the other night and I read a little bit of Emily Dickinson. And there was a little, I don't know, I just came across a little book as I was going through some books, and I started reading it. And I don't know, I'm still not a big fan of poetry. I don't know.
No, I'm not either.
I guess I'm just not deep enough. I don't know. I don't always get what they're talking about. I don't know.
And there's lots of new books coming out about Emily Dickinson too, including
really?
children's books.
Oh, wow.
I just received one called, I think it's called Call Me Emily, I think.
Okay.
And it's a kid's book. And so I'm collecting anything that has Emily in the name, because that's my new granddaughter's name.
Oh, I know. Now, how old is your new granddaughter
She's
now?
6 months old.
Oh,
So it'll be a
Lordy.
while before she can read this particular book.
Well, that's
but
all right.
I figured I'd hold on.
I'm assuming she has Goodnight Moon already.
Oh, yeah.
And Pat the Bunny.
They took all those books from our house.
Okay, that your kids all had.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of family, let's just take a minute. You and Rick own the Bennington Bookshop. Now, how did you and Rick come together?
Oh, that's a
That's
kind of
a
a
long
long
story.
story.
All right, well,
not really. He and my brother were stationed together on a small army base in Germany, and I went to visit my brother, and I met Rick.
And you are a Vermont girl, right? You grew up where in Vermont? I can't remember.
In St. Johnsbury.
In St. Johnsbury, right? And he was from.
He was from Pittsburgh,
Right.
Pennsylvania.
And you every once in a while you go back to watch games there, right?
Oh, well, and visit relatives.
A relative. Well, oh, yes, of course, to see the relatives, but I don't even know who are the Pittsburgh. I don't even know what the Pittsburgh.
Well, usually we're there in the spring, so we go see the Pirates.
Pirates. Okay,
Yeah.
so terrible with sports.
My boys are big fans of the Penguins,
Okay.
but we're usually not there at the right time, or if we are, the tickets were too expensive.
And were you always a reader? I mean, you consider yourself a lifelong reader. I mean, you
Yes.
started very young, and
Yep. My mother would bring us to the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum, which is a gorgeous place. I thought every town had a building and a library like that. Turns out that wasn't true. But we would go to story hours, and we always, back then you could only take out 3 books at a time.
Oh.
But you could go as often as you wanted.
Right.
So I just spent a lot of my life at the library, and when I graduated from high school, all the summers until I graduated from college, I worked for the state of Vermont for their library system on the bookmobile and in the library, and I learned how to mend books, and
And did you ever think you'd be owning a bookshop?
I did not.
No, that was the furthest thing from your mind?
Retail was the furthest thing from my mind because my parents were both in retail, and I saw how hard they had to work, and didn't want any part of that. But
I think you've
things
done
change.
You've done all right with the. And have you ever wanted to do writing? Have you ever
No,
wanted to sit
I
down
am
and
not
write?
a writer.
You don't wanna
I'm not a
write.
writer. No.
You don't want to write. Now, Rick is an art. I know Rick is an artist. A very
Yes.
very good artist too. I mean, he's worked on the Moose, and he's worked on. Did you do a Catamount? No,
He did a
didn't.
Catamount.
Yeah, he did. A Moose and a Catamount, and I know at one time, is there still some of his artwork hanging in the?
Well,
bookshop? There was.
it's
at
in the
one
back
point.
room, but
oh, it's
yes,
in the back
it's still
room
there.
where nobody's going to see it. Oh, well, okay. And has he ever had any urge to write? Does he write?
No, Rick
No,
isn't
neither.
a writer
No,
either.
no.
No.
And I know as a owning a bookshop, you don't always have as much time to read as you like to have because you're working all the time. It seems like. I mean,
It
well,
seems
you're not
like.
there
I mean,
every
we
day,
do
but-
have time to read. I wish I had more time, and I wish I could read faster.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I wish I was a faster reader.
Yeah.
I'm not a fast reader, not at all.
I tend to read every single word and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy each word. But I have, as I have gotten older, I have realized that you don't have to finish every
Yeah,
book that
I
you
know.
start.
I see. I do.
I've gotten
can't-
over that.
I know. I just can't get over that. Except, well, there's one, Catch-22. I just I didn't get into that book at all, and my brother-in-law is such a fan of Moby Dick. Have you read Moby Dick yet? No. Have you even tried? Nope, not yet. So I don't know. You read Moby Dick?
I had to read it in high school.
Oh, you had to. See, I never had to read it. So.
And I was one of those kids that loved things like that. I loved Moby Dick, Treasure Island.
Treasure Island. Oh, that was Robert Louis Stevenson.
Robert
yeah.
Louis Stevenson.
Of course
I
you
loved Dostoevsky. I mean, no wonder I didn't have any dates in high school. I was reading Russian literature.
God, I went right out of my head what I was just going to say. How long have you and Rick had the bookshop? How long have you
We
been
bought
the
it
owners?
at the end of 1979.
89, 99,
So
2009,
almost 35
35 years. Wow.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the nicest things, I know my sister-in-law loves to go to the Bennington bookshop. They have a big Barnes and Noble over in Manchester, New Hampshire, and of course there's Amazon and all that stuff. But she said she just loves the idea of coming into the Bennington bookshop because it's small, it's homey. She said that Rick and Ellen are always so polite, whoever happens to be there, and it is really. I've always enjoyed going in there. You are very, you'll bend over backward to help somebody. You'll go and try to find the book if you don't have it. And you're very good about, oh God, and there's such good wrappers. I would never be able to wrap. That's one of the nice perks. If you go there, if you need a book wrapped, they will wrap it as beautifully as possible. So they're very nice. And they have gift certificates.
Yes,
and
we
what
do.
is the nice thing about your gift certificates?
Well, they don't expire.
They don't expire. That has been so helpful to me. Although my last few gift certificates I did go in last week and splurged. I kind of like to hold on to them. But I know that's amazing because not many places do that. It's usually you've got a year or sometimes even 6 months. And that was a nice.
I don't think you'll find too many small businesses that will tell you you can't use one. I think it's
okay.
more the bigger.
Well,
places
I
where
think
they
that's a nice
expire.
plus. And you have a wonderful children's section and a young adult section. And, it's for a small bookshop, but if they don't have it, they will certainly bend over to try to get it for you. And usually you can
try.
have a book like in a few days, unless it's a
Unless it's
special
hard to
order or
get,
something,
yeah.
you've got to go different places to try to find it. What is the hardest type of book to find? I mean, if somebody comes to you, is there a certain type of book that's harder to find than others?
Well, a lot of
different
books are
genre?
out of print, so you have to look for those on websites, etc.
Yeah. That's the problem. You get a series and you think, oh, boy, I really like this author. Now I want to go back and get all the books in the series, and you can't get the first two or something like that.
Right.
It is so annoying. I know my friend Sue Lewis is like that too. I mean, she likes to get the series all together. I always like to be ahead, like on this James Patterson, Michael Ledwidge. I still have I Michael to read. So I'm going to read that now that I have Gone, because I'll have Gone, I'll have that to say. But and are there books that you reread because you liked them so much when you were younger? Are there any, or do you think I have enough time to reread books?
Well, I would love to be able to do that with the classics.
Really?
But I'll have to wait until I retire.
Right.
But occasionally I went back and read The Good Earth.
Oh, okay.
because I remembered that it took place in China. That was it.
Yeah, you do like books that take place in China or Asian. Actually,
Yeah, I've
many
kind of
Asian
gotten away
and the
from
Mid
that,
East
but-
too.
Yeah.
For a while there, you were
Oh,
writing quite a few. You got
Which
got something?
reminds me,
Yeah.
well, speaking of rereading things, this
Yeah.
is one that I recently reread because I picked it for my book club.
Oh, I don't know this.
Rules of Civility by
Amor.
Amor Towles.
love.
Towles. I have no
Love,
idea how
what
to
a
pronounce his name. But again, takes place in New York, Paris, London in the 30s, right before and after the Depression. So it was a very glamorous time, and then the Depression hit. But it's his first novel. Very well written, very well
never-
researched.
From when? I mean, when did this come out? About what
This
time?
came out last year. It's in paperback. I just happen to have the
Wait,
hardcover.
so you've read it
I've read it twice.
in the last year? You've read it?
No,
or
it's
when did
been.
this-
It came out about 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. But but you've read it twice. Wow.
Yeah. Well, if I pick something from my book club that I'm going to be leading the discussion, if I've read it a couple of years ago,
That's
I like
another
to go back
thing.
and
Yes,
read it again.
you belong to a book club for how many years?
Well, since I've
Long
moved
time.
here.
Since you moved here.
Yeah,
wow.
almost 35 years.
Wow.
And there's a bunch of us that are the same members.
Mhm. And you don't always agree on the books.
Oh, heavens
Just because.
no. That kind of makes for a boring discussion.
right. No, I'm sure.
But this was fun because we had martinis and.
What you
know,
just
time.
said about leading to a boring discussion. I always end the show with a quote, and the quote I have for today sort of fits in with what you just said. So let's remind people again while we're speaking. It's the Bennington Bookshop. You're at 467, I keep remembering, Main Street.
Right.
And what are your hours?
We are open weekdays from 9 o'clock to 5:30. Fridays we're only open until 6 in the wintertime, and then we'll increase that to 7 when spring comes, if it ever comes.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And Saturdays is 9:30 to 5:30, and Sundays are noon to 4. And we also we don't have a website, but we have, if you go on Google Maps, you can Google Bennington Bookshop and take a virtual tour.
Okay, and you're
inside.
442-5059.
Right.
5059.
good, Willie.
5059. Well, I think your number and the Bennington Library are sort of similar.
Yes,
Something,
they
I think.
are.
And so
Yeah.
you probably get calls, and they probably get your calls too. A big book that has been around, and you said you haven't read it when I talked to you last time, is this a new book by Donna Tartt, The Goldfinch, which has been had been a big seller for you?
Yes. Yeah,
And
definitely.
You said that you had read her first one, The Secret History, which I still haven't read. And people said, oh, you should read it. It's a really good book. And then I know she had one in between there that didn't do much business. But for some reason, and this one is about a piece of art or something?
You know, I don't really.
I
haven't.
see, I don't know.
I keep
need to
looking
get a
at
hold,
the blurb and thinking I
people
should
keep-
read
I
this,
know.
but it doesn't sound interesting.
I know,
to me,
people
so-
keep saying, you got to read this book, you got to read this book.
But Secret History was an amazing book, and she was very young when she wrote that.
And it's because, well, she was from Bennington College, and of course everybody read it thinking, oh, it's Bennington College. It's,
Yeah.
oh, we got to see, everything.
Yeah.
Now, whether it really, I don't know, I bet there was some Bennington College in there at some point.
Yeah, there was. And Bennington, I think the bookshop was mentioned in it once.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, it just went on the paperback bestseller list.
Secret History. Well,
Yeah, on the
because
New
of-
England bestseller list.
Probably because of the Goldfinch. People are going
Yes.
back now and discovering
Yeah.
the Secret History. Huh.
Yeah, and it is a good book, Billy.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sure it is. I've been told that it is.
Yeah.
And another author that I really love that you always get his books right in is Carl Hyacin, for adults and for young adults. I mean, his books always have to do with the environment and so I don't know if you've ever read any of him.
No, but I hear they're very funny.
They're very funny, and I don't. Well, there's a mystery to it, but I think you'd still enjoy it.
I have a
But
friend
think,
that likes those.
I think, yeah. So what else have we got in your bag of
Well,
books here?
this one was a very interesting book, The Wives of Los Alamos. And it's, again, based on actual women that went with their husbands and to Los Alamos in the 40s. The husbands were developing the nuclear bomb,
Right.
and it was really no one knew where they were. They weren't allowed to tell their families where they were, and they're out in the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere, really, and it's written in a kind of stream of consciousness, which annoyed me at first. But then once you get into the swing of it, it's more readable. But the first chapter is a little hard, but and you find out, how these women supported each other, how they might not have supported each other, how women can be when they're forced to be together. Maybe you don't.
The same thing with men, probably.
Yeah. But anyway, it was a very small community, and it was very close-knit, and so there were obviously people that didn't get along. And, but it was very interesting, and I wanted to read it because I think we're going to go to Los Alamos in this spring.
Oh.
Rick went to school in New Mexico, near there, and
I guess I didn't know that.
yep, he did.
Oh.
And I've never been out there, so
Yeah.
we're going to go.
My friend Mary Natalie, the art teacher at Pownell School, she just loves Santa Fe.
Well, we're also going to go to Santa Fe.
Oh my God, she loves Santa Fe.
Well,
She's
there's
just
such an art community
crazy.
there
Yeah,
too.
that's why she
Yeah.
likes it. And yet another person. Now, I wanted to ask you about. Well, I have these two. You introduced me to this book, The Book of Joe, many years ago. Do you still have this book? Do you still carry it?
I don't still
Do
have
you think
it.
it's out of? Do you think it's out of print?
I don't think it's out of
I
print.
hope not, because it's a wonderful, wonderful book. I know Grace Marie and I bought a few for people to give them give as gifts, and I just discovered at a bookshop the other day that there, or not a bookshop, a book sale. There's one called Everything Changes by him, which I didn't realize. I never thought to look for another book, but this is about a guy who writes a book, becomes popular, then he goes back to his hometown because his father is ill. The town hates him for writing this book. They end up throwing the books on his lawn. I mean, he gets into all kinds of trouble. But it's also, it's funny, but it's also very touching. I mean, the relationship between the main character, and his father is just, And another book that I discovered, now this is when I was out in Chicago. I don't even know if you guys even had this book. This book is full of spiders.
Never heard of it, or him.
Well, it is one of the craziest. I mean, I'm sure it's going to become, if it's not, a cult type book, because the first one was called John Dies at the End. Well,
Oh, I've heard of that one.
well, all right. Well, it's a movie too, which I haven't seen. But evidently, John doesn't die at the end because he's a character in this book. But if you've got teenagers coming in and they're looking for something, maybe you don't have this, but they come in asking for it, you'll know that it's a very strange, quirky. But I like that kind of,
Yeah,
I like
do.
just about anything. I can read just about anything.
Well,
so.
one of the I haven't been reading much of the young adult or the kids books lately, but one of the young adult books that I read was called Eleanor and Park, and it's by a woman named Rainbow Rowell, and it was such a wonderful book about
a name.
this. Yeah,
I'm not gonna
and she
forget
just wrote a new book too, which I haven't read yet, but. My sales rep told me about it, and she went through the whole story, and she said, "Do you think you'll read it?" And I said, "Yeah, it sounds good." So she stopped telling me the story, and I started reading the book where she stopped telling me about halfway through.
Yeah.
So I read that, and then at the end I had to go back and read from the beginning again because it was just so wonderful. It's about these two kids in high school. One is a heavy-set girl with curly red hair, and the boy, Park, is, I think he's Korean, and doesn't really fit in either at school, but it doesn't bother him. He just, but they're put on a project to do together, and they end up falling in love, and it's just such a sweet story, and her family, of course, is very dysfunctional. She has a stepfather that's mean, and but anyway, it's just such an uplifting.
It's an uplifting young adult book.
It is.
Oh, okay.
It's not
it is.
dystopian horror.
Right,
or,
right, or yeah, right.
And then another, the kids book that I read, and I brought it with me. It's the Vermont Reads book
for
this year, and it's called Wonder, and it's by R.J. Palacio, and it's about this little boy in the 5th grade who is born with facial deformities, and his parents decide that it's time for him to go to public school. He's been homeschooled, and so they're in Manhattan, so he goes to a private school, and you know, some of the kids, of course, are horrified by his face, but he does make this one friend, and it's just, and he ends up, the whole school just loves him, and it's told, he writes, sometimes the chapters are from his point of view, sometimes they're from the point of view of his older sister, and then sometimes from her boyfriend, and sometimes from her friend.
Now, is this a new book? Because sometimes the Vermont Reads isn't necessarily a brand new book, is it?
I think it came out in 2012.
Oh, okay. So
it's not in paperback yet. Yeah, 2012.
Oh, okay.
But of course, it won't be until next year sometime. But it's again just such a heartwarming story, and I think it appeals to kids and adults. It's just great.
I like books like that where you get one chapter is by one character. I'm finally getting to Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I would imagine that was a good seller too.
It went back on the bestseller list again this week.
Well, I just started it. Oh man, is it good? I just can't imagine what's going to happen in this book. And the movie's coming out, I believe, this summer with Ben Affleck.
Oh.
And somebody said to me the other day, I read that book. Ben Affleck is not handsome enough to be that character, but I sort of disagree from what I'm getting out of the book. I think Ben Affleck is a good choice. And she's written 2 other books too, Sharp Objects and Dark Places. Man, they were good too. But this Gone Girl, it's got both of them beat. I'm telling you, it's something else. If you want, evidently, it's going to get quite suspenseful.
Well, people either loved that book or they hated it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There doesn't seem to be any middle road on that one.
What is the biggest seller right now at the bookshop? What seems to be the most popular book? Fiction,
well, I can show you.
nonfiction, whatever.
I can show you some of them.
Oh, okay. We still got some time.
This one it's called Orange is the New Black.
Oh, well, that's a series on Showtime.
It's a series.
Yes.
I read this one, and it's about her year, the author's year, Piper Kerman, her year in a prison. She was caught smuggling drugs, but not at the time. I mean, they went back and proved that she had done it somehow. I'm not real clear on that, but anyway, it's just about what the prison system was like, and the friends she made, and how she had to cope.
Right. Oh, I said Showtime. It's Netflix. So.
Yeah, it's really very good. I enjoyed it a lot, and that one is on the bestseller list. This one isn't anymore, but it was last year. Midnight in Peking. It was the very end of when the British were in China, and they, of course, lived in an enclave, and this young woman was found murdered outside the enclave, and the police never really wanted to follow up on it, and her father persisted and finally got some newspapers involved in it and everything, but that was years later when they actually solved the murder, because the British had to leave. But he always wanted to know.
Do you find that when there's the little sticker or something that says it's one that says, say, Edgar
That's an Edgar Award.
Edgar Award or a do you find that people sort of gravitate towards those books because it got an award or it got a
Yeah, I think if you had to choose, if you were trying to choose, maybe you might choose the one that won the
Oprah.
award.
Is Oprah back with a book club? No.
Yes,
She does,
is,
again,
yeah.
right.
What's on it? Wild is on it.
Oh,
Has
okay.
been on it.
Oh, yeah, I read that. I read that.
Did you?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Didn't
I
read
did.
it.
I did. Well, I know we're coming pretty close to the end of our hour, so do you have anything else you want to quickly,
Oh, I would like to mention,
because
that
oh,
about this, Chris Knopf is an author, a mystery writer, that is coming to do a fundraiser for the Bennington Free Library.
Right.
And we have his books. We have 4 of his books at the store. He's
I had
written
never
10.
heard of him.
At the store, we have Dead Anyway, Last Refuge, Cries of the Lost, and Black Swan, and they're all in hardcover except for Dead Anyway. That's I'm sorry, Last Refuge is in paperback.
Okay. Now, what is the date of that? Because we.
It's coming up. It's going to be a week from Saturday.
All right.
So the last Saturday of the month.
Okay,
and
March. So just in case this show doesn't get on before then, Ellen has told you that his books are
They are available at the
Some of them
bookstore.
are available at the library or at the bookshop, or you can probably order other ones and stuff or whatever.
Right.
I've never heard of this author. It was brand new name to me.
He went to school with Dave Newell, and Dave is on the library board.
Yeah,
and
right.
got him to come.
Oh, son of a
So
gun.
he should be an interesting speaker.
Yeah.
He writes as a hobby, really.
Right.
He has a day job.
Huh.
So
Okay. Well, before we do end up here, let's once again tell everybody the Bennington Bookshop, and you are located where?
467 Main Street, right in the heart of Bennington's downtown.
And your telephone number?
Is 802-442-5059.
And remind people of store hours again?
Basically 9 to 5:30, and Sundays noon to 4.
Okay. And if you are looking for a great place to visit here in Bennington, they'd love to have you come in and browse. Of course, they want you to come in and buy too. But remember, they have books. They have all kinds of travel guides and cookbooks and biographies. And what else? We've got a wonderful children's section and young adults, and you have travel guides and brochures. You have notebooks. You have I don't know. Do you still have a wonderful display of books on sale at the moment? Or
We
is that
do.
sale? Yeah, that's still
We
going
do.
on. You have little games for kids. You have all kinds of stuff. It's not just
And
books.
cards.
And cards. Oh, they have a beautiful assortment of cards.
And calendars.
And
also.
calendars,
Right now
yeah,
they're
right now
50% off.
Right. In case you didn't get your
Right.
2014 calendar yet.
Or if you just need one for the pictures or whatever.
Right. Well, I want to thank Ellen Havlick for being here today. We haven't done this,
It's been a long
2
time.
years, 2.5 years, whatever. So it has been a long time, and it was fun to do this, and we will definitely do it again. And told you before, I always end this show with a quote. And the quote that I have today goes along very nicely with what you said. This is a quote from U.S. General George S. Patton. And it is, "If everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking."
I
like
love that.
I like that. If
Yeah.
everybody is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. So I'll thank Ellen for being a guest today, and I want to thank everyone who listens to and watches Your Friends and Neighbors. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next show that we do. I don't know who that guest will be, but it'll be somebody interesting. It might be one of your friends or one of your neighbors. So until then, thank you so much, and we shall see you next time.
I take a long look around, I have to say, this time of year, it becomes clear, those you hold dear, you draw them near, this time of day,